Hello friends, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Prathamesh. Without wasting our time, let's begin. And if you like, please like, share, and subscribe.
In April 2026, the indicator lights on federal civilian executive branch networking equipment are essentially blinking red. CISA has issued a concentrated barrage of emergency directives requiring immediate intervention on federal infrastructure. These warnings target a specific class of sophisticated, persistent malware designed to embed itself deep within core networking hardware. The apex threat driving this urgency is detailed in Emergency Directive 2503. CISA identified a highly resilient backdoor known as Firestarter. Firestarter specifically exploits Cisco Firepower and Secure Firepower products, running either Adaptive Security Appliance, ASA, or Firepower Threat Defense software. The volume and severity of the directives issued this month require a structural, disciplined response across the entire network perimeter, rather than ad hoc troubleshooting. When IT administrators spot a compromised device, the ingrained reflex is to isolate the hardware remotely, apply the manufacturer's software patch, and execute a soft reboot to load the clean configuration. Applying that standard CVE remediation playbook to Firestarter actively damages forensic operations while leaving the backdoor completely intact. This diagram illustrates the two contrasting defensive mindsets. The top pipeline represents the speed of standard remote IT remediation, which ends in a failure state. The standard remote pipeline fails because Firestarter is designed to survive a simple software reload. Patching with vulnerability might close the initial entry vector, but the remote soft reboot destroys the volatile evidence needed to analyze the payload, all while the malware remains anchored in the hardware. The CISA-mandated pipeline forces administrators to abandon remote speed for a precise chronological flow, freeze all operations, extract system memory for forensic analysis, and physically disconnect the device from its power source. In the context of advanced persistent threats, speed is often counterproductive. Effective mitigation requires that administrative reflexes yield completely to strict forensic sequencing. This is why the first mandatory action of Emergency Directive 2503 is strict evidence preservation. Network administrators must immediately halt all standard remote operations. Under this directive, issuing any remote patching or rebooting commands is strictly forbidden. Look at this architectural breakdown of a Cisco device's memory. The critical zone is the volatile memory block, exactly where the active Firestarter payload executes. It operates without writing files to the physical hard drive, living entirely in the active electrical states of RAM. If an administrator initiates a soft reset, the charge drops, erasing the footprint of what the malware was doing. Because the backdoor mechanism survives the software reboot, altering the system state prior to forensic collection constitutes the spoliation of critical national security evidence. To preserve that volatile data, agencies must execute CISA's specific core dump and hunt instructions before touching the hardware. The objective is to capture a complete, unadulterated snapshot of the system's volatile memory precisely as it exists in its compromised state, freezing the malware's execution in place for analysis. As shown in this wireframe representation, CISA requires agencies to route these extracted memory files directly into their secure portal, labeled Malware Next Gen. The timeline for this extraction is rigid. FCEB agencies must submit all core dumps by 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on April 24, 2026. The objective extends beyond localized clearing. By centralizing the core dumps, individual agency data feeds into a federal forensic apparatus, allowing analysts to reverse engineer the malware and deploy network-wide countermeasures. Once memory is captured, the only approved method for clearing the hardware is to physically disconnect the power cable from the back of the appliance. This step is mandatory. Agencies must perform this physical intervention, even if the initial core dump reveals no indicators of compromise. A soft reboot fails because it only commands the operating system to reload. The underlying hardware components remain electrically active, providing a safe harbor for the persistent backdoor to wait out the software cycle. This abstract schematic illustrates the physics of the mandated hard reset. When the physical plug is pulled, the internal capacitors begin draining their stored electrical charge down to absolute zero. It is only through this total loss of electrical power that the hardware states collapse, guaranteeing the backdoor is eradicated from the appliance. CISA set a final deadline for agencies to complete this physical mitigation requirement, no later than April 30, 2026. Advanced persistence has bypassed software controls. Physical hardware intervention is now the final, unavoidable line of defense. Firestarter on Cisco firewalls is only one point of vulnerability. Zooming out from a single appliance reveals a macro view of enterprise network topology under pressure. Alongside ED 2503, CISA issued a cluster of broader infrastructure directives throughout February and April of 2026, targeting routing and legacy hardware. This macro network topology map highlights two other critical vectors. First is the SD-WAN controller node, governed by Emergency Directive 2603, addressing the active exploitation of Cisco Catalyst platforms. For the SD-WAN systems, agencies must inventory all components, deploy specific patches for vulnerabilities like CVE 2026-20127, and actively hunt for indicators of compromise on the controller nodes. The second factor concerns legacy hardware. Binding Operational Directive 26-02 requires agencies to execute a full inventory of all end-of-support edge devices, hardware that no longer receives security updates from the manufacturer. Agencies face a hard deadline of May 5, 2026 to compile and report this complete legacy inventory back to CISA. Outdated, unsupported edge hardware provides no telemetry and accepts no patches. These devices create fatal network blind spots that state-sponsored actors actively hunt. Beyond the enterprise routing layer, CISA issued an operational technology warning in April regarding Iranian-affiliated actors. The mandate directs operators to review system logs for specific indicators of compromise on internet-facing programmable logic controllers, the hardware bridging digital networks and physical industrial machinery. And on April 20th, a separate alert detailed a supply chain compromise within the open-source ecosystem, specifically targeting the Axios NPM package. A compromised NPM package creates an automated distribution vector. Developers pulling the infected Axios package risk unknowingly downloading multi-stage payloads, including remote access Trojans, directly into their development pipelines. Securing the modern federal perimeter demands a total operational shift. Strict forensic hardware discipline, constant software pipeline verification, and absolute device lifecycle visibility. We design network perimeter defenses to sound the alarm the second they are breached, but a specific class of intrusion is engineered to slip through those glowing barriers in complete silence, establishing a foothold without tripping a single wire. In April 2026, the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency issued a dense cluster of critical emergency directives addressing this exact threat. These mandates were aimed squarely at federal civilian executive branch agencies, requiring immediate, coordinated action across the government. This animated timeline maps out that rapid succession of alerts, starting in February and accelerating into April. As the notes populate, they reveal a clear pattern: a targeted assault on network edge infrastructure, aiming for persistent compromise. The most severe threat highlighted in this cluster is a highly sophisticated backdoor known as Firestarter. Its primary target is the core routing and security hardware built by Cisco. The convergence of these alerts suggests the network edge is being targeted with a new level of persistence, one that forces a transition away from standard maintenance routines toward a highly specific remediation protocol. The specific hardware caught in the crosshairs includes Cisco Firepower and Secure Firewall products. More specifically, the threat targets environments running either Adaptive Security Appliance or Firepower Threat Defense software. When a vulnerability like this is announced, the standard IT reflex is automatic. Administrators immediately download the latest firmware patches and execute a software reboot. But against the Firestarter malware, executing that standard patch and reboot reflex is a fatal error. This backdoor is explicitly engineered to survive standard device restarts. Attempting traditional remediation fails to clear the threat, and it actively destroys the very forensic evidence investigators need to track it. Defeating Firestarter means stopping that automated reflex. Administrators must strictly follow the four-step forensic first protocol mandated by CISA Emergency Directive 2503. Step 1 of Emergency Directive 2503 is strict evidence preservation. The moment a potential compromise is discovered, network defenders must resist the urge to touch the device. Do not apply patches, do not initiate reboots. To understand why, look at this simplified schematic of a firewall's internal architecture. Notice the clear division between the non-volatile storage drive on the left and the volatile RAM blocks on the right. Active processes, including microscopic malware artifacts, reside temporarily in that volatile RAM. The act of applying a software patch inherently forces the system to move data. Watch as the digital blocks representing a new patch cascade down, permanently overwriting the existing data currently held in the RAM blocks. As the incoming patch data fills the memory, the specific red nodes representing Firestarter's artifacts are erased. The overwrite process destroys the malware's microscopic forensic footprint. Without capturing that footprint, threat hunters lose their only opportunity to analyze how the backdoor functions and where else it might be hiding. Any state change to the compromised device is a destructive action. In modern incident response, freezing the system in its current state, literally doing nothing, is the critical first active step. Once the system is frozen, administrators move to step 2, core dump collection. A core dump is the process of safely extracting an exact bit-for-bit snapshot of the device's current volatile memory state. Because this process is highly sensitive, CISA provides precise core dump and hunt instructions tailored uniquely for both ASA and FTD environments. The objective of these instructions is to sift through the massive volume of normal network traffic data and isolate the backdoor's specific signature. This leads directly into step 3, forensic submission. Once the memory files are safely extracted, administrators cannot simply analyze them locally. They must be transmitted directly to CISA. The files must be uploaded via CISA's Malware Next-Gen portal. For federal civilian agencies, this is a strict mandate with a hard deadline. Uploads must be completed by 11:59 p.m. EST on April 24, 2026. This extraction phase takes isolated incidents across dozens of individual agencies and pools them into centralized intelligence, allowing CISA to map the contours of a much broader state-sponsored campaign. The final mandate is step 4, the physical power cycle. Even if a core dump reveals absolutely no indicators of compromise, agencies are still required to execute this step no later than April 30, 2026. The directive makes a crucial distinction here: the difference between a soft software reboot and a hard physical power cycle. This technical schematic illustrates the divergence. The left side represents a soft reboot, while the right side demonstrates a physical power cycle. Looking at the soft reboot on the left, watch as the operating system interface restarts. Notice that the baseline electrical current continues flowing uninterrupted to the RAM components. Because that power supply remains constant during a soft software restart, Firestarter's malicious hooks stay resident. They easily survive the cycle and remain active in memory. Now shift focus to the physical power cycle requirement on the right. Here, the main power line is entirely severed. Administrators must physically walk up to the rack and unplug the device from its power source. Pulling the plug forces capacitors to drain residual electricity. The glowing energy smoothly bleeds out of the circuitry until the board goes completely dark. Only total electrical deprivation forces the volatile RAM to clear to absolute zero. This physical action is the only method that guarantees the termination of any active Firestarter malware threats. Software cannot be trusted to clean itself. Defeating persistent edge malware ultimately requires humans to assert physical control over the hardware. CISA's focus on the Firestarter protocol sits within a wider strategy to harden the entire network perimeter. The agency is currently targeting vulnerabilities across a variety of infrastructure types. This wide network topology map pulls back from a single central firewall node to reveal dozens of interconnected devices, forming a vast and complex perimeter. Concurrently, CISA issued Emergency Directive 2603 to address active exploitation elsewhere on this map. Notice the specific nodes tagged as SD-WAN controllers, now marked with a warning for a vulnerability cataloged as CVE 2026-20127. That directive mandates rapid inventorying, the application of specific patches for vulnerabilities like the 2026-2127 exploit, and proactive threat hunting. Just weeks prior, an operational technology warning alerted operators that Iranian-affiliated actors were specifically targeting internet-facing programmable logic controllers. And underlying all of this is Binding Operational Directive 26-02, which sets a separate critical deadline of May 5, 2026. That directive mandates a full audit of all end-of-support edge devices. Watch as the aging, isolated legacy nodes on the edge of the map turn gray, representing unsupported hardware that must be audited and replaced. State-sponsored actors are actively mapping the entire digital perimeter, targeting everything from advanced firewalls to forgotten legacy hardware. The April 2026 CISA directives establish a harsh new baseline for modern network administration. Automated patching and routine software management are no longer sufficient to secure the perimeter. Effective defense requires a proactive, forensic-first approach to incident response. It requires strict lifecycle auditing to track end-of-support hardware before those forgotten boxes become an entry point. But the most immediate threat remains Firestarter's presence on Cisco devices. Administrators must internalize the exact four-step sequence required by Emergency Directive 25-03. To eradicate persistent edge threats, you must preserve the evidence, dump the core, submit the intelligence, and pull the plug.
Thank you for watching my video. If you like this, please share and subscribe. Bye. We will meet in next video.